mic, camera, action.
Right, let's sort the buyers from the spires, the needy from the greedy, and those who trust me from the ones who don't. Because if you can't see value here today, you're not up here shopping, you're up here shoplifting. You see these goods, never seen daylight, moonlight, Israelites, fanny by the gaslight. Take a bag, come on, take a bag. I took a bag home last night, cost me a lot more than £10, I can tell you. Anyone like jewellery? Look at that one there. Handmade in Italy, hand stolen in Stepney. It's as long as my arm, I wish it was as long as something else. Don't think because these boxes are sealed up they're empty. The only man who sells empty boxes is the undertaker. And by the look of some of you lot here today, I'd make more money with me measuring tape. Here, one price, £10.
Welcome back to the Filmography, the show dedicated to watching every credited film from an actor's complete back catalogue, from past debut through to present day in chronological order. Each episode, myself and my esteemed guest will watch and discuss the next entry from the focused filmography and consider how it ranks amidst their career and whether we can trace any typecasting trends or topic traits or theatrical tics. I'm your host, Jack, and today, to launch the show, I'm joined by your neighbourhood friend and mine, the spectacular Spider-Dan, to discuss the debut of the Stath in Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels. We watch, you listen, and hopefully watch along too. So, my good friend Spider-Dan, welcome to the show. I can't thank you enough for assisting me in launching my new venture.
Oi, oi, Sevaloy. Well, thank you very much for having me on and being the first guest. I am truly honoured that my biggest fan of my podcast is inviting me on his very own.
Well, that's it. It feels like a full circle, doesn't it? I mean,
absolutely.
Been chatting for a long time, for years, really, hadn't we? And then we met about a year ago now, maybe. I can't remember when episode 100 came out.
I think, yeah, it was around March, wasn't it? I believe it was around March that we recorded it, but I knocked it back because I didn't want to interrupt the flow of because it was the whole idea of that episode was it was our first meeting, which it was technically.
Yeah.
But Tony's the season's greetings episode was going to happen before, so I went, right, I can't have that. Not that it was a bad episode, but I was just like, I need that to be organic. I needed that to be right. So we fast tracked that episode, even though it wasn't for quite some time. But I thought it was one of my favorite episodes. Easy.
Yeah, and our brotherhood has only blossomed since, hasn't it? We're in with both barrels to coin the film.
Oh yes. Double-barreled, fully loaded, lock, stock. Neither of us are smoking, but we could if we wanted to.
No, we could, I suppose. Yeah, if we wanted to end our lives even earlier than they may well do anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I've got asthma, so it certainly wouldn't help any of my breathing problems. So yes, we won't do that. We'll leave that to the film's characters.
Definitely, yeah, 100%. Whatever they choose to smoke, good on them. So we're here. It's episode 1. It's a auspicious start, I think, for the Stath Lock, Stock. Getting in with one of the 4 main roles in his first feature is probably quite unusual. It is a habit of mine. So this show is going to tap into my OCD tendencies to have an actor, and I do like to kind of watch through. I'm in the midst of doing DiCaprio currently with my partner. We've already done Tom Cruise. We've watched all of Ruth Wilson's output, theatre and films. So it's definitely something which I'm drawn to do as a person. So I just thought, why not record myself doing it, talking to my mates, letting the world share in the joy, I suppose.
Absolutely. I was enjoying your Critters reviews recently. And because you are the completist. I think Tony said it before. You are the completist, regardless of what will happen and what will come. You've got to finish them all. You've got to do them all. You've got to catch them all, so to speak.
For better or worse, you're quite right. Sometimes I put myself through the mill to make sure I get there.
But it's good. It's good that you allow yourself to experience these things because you never know. These ones that are critically panned, you may love. You never know.
Absolutely true.
I always go in with that, hoping, that it's going to be, the gold standard, the masterpiece. And, it could be. I like a lot of films that people don't like more than most, probably. And as one of the latest podcasts has gone on to show, but I won't spoil that particular podcast.
Oh, lovely.
But let's, well, I think it's a wonderful idea. So a wonderful idea for a podcast. I think it's inspired.
Well, I think it's our like minds which drew us together in the first place, wasn't it? Your sense of like giving everything a try and trying to talk about and find the joy and the good and the positive behind the scenes, or you always try to find something to talk about, even if it's the Ewok movies.
Yes,
you will find the
true.
joy in reviewing those. And I think I try to do the same. We can be critical when something is shit, because there is shit out there. But as we were just talking before we started recording, getting a film made is really hard work. And as long as you acknowledge that and you look at the success when it's there, even if it's a small thing, a performance or an effect or an edit there'll be something to appreciate, I think.
Absolutely. Every single time, you'll find, like, all the Spider-Man movies I love in their own unique ways. And there's, I love Spider-Man in general, and there'll always be something, even a scene or a reference or, whatever it may be. I'll always pull something fun and just go, well, they got that bit right, or I like this, and this was nice. There's always something good to find in a bucket of shit sometimes.
Which isn't a good place to go for here, because I don't think this is a bucket of shit. No. But I can't wait to hear what you think.
I will say it does look like it's been dripped in raw sewage. Just the colouring on the colouring on it. I'm not saying the film is raw sewage, but it does have that light brown.
Looks like you wiped your ass with it. Yeah, true. Before we
grimy.
It's grimy, that's true, yeah. Before we get into the film, as this is episode 1, or I think it's worth talking about the Stath a little bit before we get to his actual performance in Lock, Stock, because he'd been around for about 8-10 years maybe before this, but not in the places where you might expect to find him, I suppose. So I don't know if you know any of his back history, if you've seen any of the lovely tweets that I've sent out that have got some of his previous work in it.
I've not seen all of the tweets, but I know he was a martial artist, obviously. That was part of his thing. He was also a diver, I believe, Olympic diver. And
not
also,
a very good one if you see the footage, but yeah, he was one.
Okay. And he also, I know from reading the IMDb on this, that he was the kind of Cockney geezer seller, street seller, a kind of a Del Boy type, out the back of the van sort of thing. But no, tell me more. I'm interested.
I mean, you just said it there, really. He's like a jack of all trades, or he's a Jace of all trades, I suppose. Yeah, he had quite an interesting existence. So yeah. If you just Google like Jason Statham diving, it's hilarious watching him. I mean, he got to the Commonwealth Games, so it's a bit unfair. Clearly, he was good at what he was doing. He just made a big splash, which obviously is the opposite of what you should be doing when you're a diver. Sadly, so it didn't quite pan out from there. But it's quite, I guess it's quite fun knowing how successful he's gone on to be. Like watching, if that was his one moment, it'd be really sad. But because he's gone on to be a megastar, it's not too big a deal. But then, he started his little foray into modelling. I couldn't find too much of that, which was a shame, because I was really keen on seeing some of his catalogue work. Because he's a handsome guy.
I think it'd be interesting because he has quite a high hairline. Well, I've got a non-existent hairline now, but I've had some people say, "Oh, you've got that look about you and stuff." And I did a Batman fan film a while back, and my inspiration for playing Alfred, because it was this younger Alfred, slightly younger Alfred, a bit more. I was in a very good shape at the time, so I was a bit more lithe, a bit more action oriented. So I based it on Jason Statham. So
Love
I had this, Cockney geezer. I'm Master Wayne, I've taken the liberty of upgrading your armor, all that sort of stuff. You dippy bastard. It was very much in line with that. And even I laughed because I went to. It's not a good fan film. I've talked about it before. But I was watching The Batman, and Andy Serkis says, "I've taken the liberty," and I laughed to myself. I was like, of all the Alfreds,
he's ripped you off the inspiration.
I know, he's a dippy bastard.
He is. Yeah.
Anyway, it's not about the Batman. We're talking about the Stath. I like the Stath. I like the Stath. I think he's a really committed. He always gives it 110%. You kind of know what you're going to get from him. I think, in some respect. I did watch one of the films which was on the list. I caught halfway through, and I was really thrown because it wasn't really an action movie. It was called Wild Card, and it was like it wasn't really. It kind of ended. It's more like a drama, like an addiction drama about kind of Las Vegas and gambling and stuff, and trying to get out of that life. And it kind of just ended, and I was like, I thought we were in the middle, like
right,
it just ended.
Yeah.
So I might need to rewatch that one because I think it is more of a serious kind of take in a drama role. But yeah, he's great. I love the Transporter films personally, and I think he's in the Expendables. There's a lot of people in that, but I think again he delivers. He's probably the second main character, I guess, in the
Definitely,
Expendables. Yeah. But yeah, I've always enjoyed him. I think he has fun. I think his role in Spy is comedic gold. It's genius. He's got a sense of humor about himself, and I like that about actors when they do that and they take the fun end, the mick out themselves. I appreciate that because it's it can get a bit stuffy and people can get up themselves a bit too much. But no, I've always liked his work, and I can't wait to hear what you and your other guests think of his other films as well.
I mean, I agree with all of that. I think committed is the word. And I think he is so grateful isn't the right word, but he appreciates the position he's not found himself in because, he has worked hard. But I think he appreciates his place now in this Hollywood machine. And I think he continues to put in the work, continues to look amazing. So, he works off camera to keep his shape, but he continues to work on camera in the roles he's given, be it the slightly more dramatic, like Wild Card that you mentioned, like Hummingbird is another one where he's not phoning it at all. He's working really hard. And as you say, look, when he delves into Spy and he ups the comedic chops, I think you can argue he has limited range, but I do think he has some. But he stays in his wheelhouse of what he knows he can do.
Yeah, I do remember his accent in the one, and I remember going, oof. That's not great. And then
accents are not his strength.
No. After that, he never really did another accent again. And I was like, you've learned from that. You've gone, not really my bag. I am what I am, and I'm gonna make what I am the best it can be. And I appreciate about him.
He's a bit of a Michael Caine in that way, isn't he? Just no matter who you're playing, where you're from, just talk how you talk, Jace. It's fine.
Or a Sean Connery. That might be a better comparison because even when he's an Egyptian Spaniard, in a Highlander, he's still Scottish as anything. So, but you kind of got to appreciate that in a way as well. That they'll still stick to his chops. Even in the Untouchables, it was like you're not really Irish.
No.
But again, if people expect Statham to be Statham, you expect that voice, you expect the Cockney geezer attitude to come out, and invariably in whatever film it is, fantasy, action, drama, you're going to get it.
Absolutely. Yeah. What I read was something I thought was really interesting was that he talks about his inspirations and who he looks up to as actors and as as professionals who he could compare himself to. And the list is fascinating. So you've got Sylvester Stallone, makes sense. Bruce Lee with his martial arts. You've got Paul Newman, Steve McQueen, and Clint Eastwood. What do you reckon to those five people?
Well, they're all kind of hard men, aren't they? In one way or another. Or if they're not a martial artist, they're they're like Dirty Harry, and I guess with Stallone and kind of Rocky, I can see he's the kind of underdog. I can he's tried his, Rocky's tried his, Stallone's tried his hand at many things, singing, comedy, what have you. He's tried his best, and again, he kind of fits into that more popular mold of the action hero. Mostly Rambo and Rocky. I think Clint Eastwood is definitely maybe it's a sign of his more artistic chops, maybe Statham, because obviously Clint Eastwood is a director, and he doesn't just do action movies like Stallone mostly does. And yeah, I could see that. Bruce Lee obviously is a big, I can sure is a big inspiration physically and for martial arts as well. But Paul Newman and Steve McQueen, they're all about charm, I think. There's a lot of charm with their performances, and there's a lot of likability. And there's acting prowess, I think, as well. I think with all of them, there is acting prowess. So I think it is quite telling, actually, those choices. And they kind of make a lot of sense to see where his career has gone as well.
I think if I had to pull like strands of actors into DNA to turn to Jason Statham, I'm not sure I can think of 5 better people. Like he has that twinkle in his eye of like a Newman or a McQueen, of that cheeky like charisma, as you were saying, like, and he's having fun. And he knows those guys always knew they were film stars and always knew that even no matter how hard they acted, they were always, I think they were always Paul Newman. They're always Steve McQueen. They're always actors portraying a role rather than losing themselves in a role.
Sure.
Personally, I love them both. I think they're both fantastic actors, but I think they were always an actor in a role rather than an actor losing themselves in a role. And I think, he's got that too.
I think like none of those are character actors.
No,
you know what I mean, there's not a Willem Dafoe. There's nobody that it's not as transformative of those actors aren't as transformative as say more talented actors, not more talented actors, but
I know what you're saying. It's a different style.
Character act, a different style, that actively transform. Gary Oldman is the best example for me, who just absolutely transforms himself from film to film. And I think he's like one of the, if not the character actor for me. And he is unrecognizable from Leon, from Bram Stoker's, from Batman, from Harry Potter. I think I saw a clip the other day where Alderman was like, a kid went up to him and went, you're bloody Sirius Black from Harry Potter. And the other kid went, no, you're an idiot. He's Commissioner Gordon. like exactly. The kids were like, no, you are this. This is definitely you. And the other kid was like, no, and they're going to fight, probably going to fight BVS style. And that just goes to show how strong a character actor he is.
Agreed.
But I think with those actors as well, they also know what they're good at, and they know their worth, and they know how to deliver on what they're good at. And I think Statham is exactly the same.
Agreed. I reckon Gary Oldman and Christian Bale are the two people who come to mind when they talk in their own accents. I'm like, what? Who's that? They're like, I don't know what they sound like until you hear them talking. And then you're like, oh shit, that's what you really sound like. You can't hear it until you look. You don't know what it sounds like until you hear it. Oldman is on the list. That is for sure for years down the line if this podcast's still going.
I'll do every episode, man. I'm happy to. If you need me to, I'm there. I'm there because I think of stuff like even spoilers, but he's in Hannibal. He's not credited, but he's in Hannibal. And again, you can't recognize him because there's a lot of makeup, but also that voice is not unlike anything that has ever come out of Gary Oldman before and or since. Just incredible. Anyway, Statham is great.
Statham. So this is film number 1 on the list. He's made 41 films to date. By the time I get to the end of this, it may be 42, it may be 43. We'll see. How many do you reckon you've seen of the 41?
I want to say like a good maybe 10, 12, maybe 10, 11, 12, I think. I think it's not like a lot of probably the more kind of blockbustery ones. I think maybe I've definitely seen all the Transporters. I've definitely seen Snatch. I'm just trying to think what else. Wild Card, I guess I've technically seen. Yeah. All the Expendables. Spy. I think a good handful that I know what to expect from Jason Statham in a film. I'd say
definitely. You're still getting a range within that, aren't you? You're getting like Transporter Statham is the one which he blew up in, I think. Obviously, I discovered him here. I did see Lock, Stock at the cinema, but the Transport was the one, wasn't it? Where suddenly, gone.
Yeah. I was going to say Crank as well. I've seen the Crank film.
Of course,
so
yeah.
So kind of about 10 or so, I'd say.
Yeah, and you get Expendables sidekick Statham, and and like you say, you've seen the more dramatic Statham, you've seen the overly comedic Statham, so you have seen the broad scope, I reckon. Of
I tell a lie. I've seen one of the Fast and the Furious films, and Hobbs and Shaw as well.
There you go.
So that's it. That's like Fast and the Furious 7 or 6. I've not seen any of the other ones.
Yeah,
so I started at the right place, I think.
Absolutely. When the state's there, you should check in too. Definitely.
It's the one where he rescues a baby. It's that Fast and the Furious
8, I think. Fate
yeah,
and the Furious,
that'll be the one.
Yeah. Hardboard, homages. I'm here for those too.
Oh God, yeah, absolutely.
All right, so we know where we're at in terms of our Stath fandom. It's pretty high, I would say. What about Lock, Stock? Have you seen it before?
I have actually never seen Lock, Stock. I've seen a lot of, again, another fair smattering of Guy Ritchie films. I've seen Sherlock Holmes. I've seen Snatch, which I really like. What else have I seen? I saw Aladdin, to my detriment.
Yeah.
I don't think even he wants to see Aladdin. I know you've seen the King Arthur one, which I'm not sure if I'm. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm quite ready for Lock, Stock, and 2 smoking Excaliburs.
No. That's good.
There you go. But yeah, I've seen a fair few, and
that pun is better than anything they managed to do in the movie. I'll tell you that right now.
Oh Jesus, I wasn't even trying.
Yeah,
Christ. But there you go. But yeah, he does. I think he does. I don't know what you there's probably a script writing term. I don't know if it's maybe comedy of errors or something like that, because it's all these kind of disparate characters, disparate elements that kind of come together in a kind of climactic, catastrophic finale. Like it all just kind of blows apart. Very much like True Romance, which is it's got a large cast, and it comes to that massive climax where all the different stories weave together. And again, there is probably a script writing term for it, but I'm going to say comedy of errors, because again, it's like it's mistakes happen that causes the complications and the issues and the problems and the intersecting stories. But I really like that. I really enjoy that element, because you kind of slowly see it, and you see like there'll be a flashback to Breaker when he's watching the TV and the guy was on fire and things. And I like the interweaving of stuff like that. So I've always really enjoyed that element. I love the kind of the Cockney geezer element. I think my surname is from down south as well. My granddad was a Cockney, so it's in my blood somewhere to be a dodgy dealer geezer. And
so you're part Southern Shandy, yeah?
Absolutely. Jelly deals and all the cockles and everything. All the stereotypical stuff. But yeah, it's I enjoy this. But yeah, it was I think I prefer Snatch if I'm going to compare. I think Snatch, just there's something about Snatch is I think he got his style and got his kind of bits, everything was in place and it works. But I don't think it works as well or as snappy or as well executed as Snatch is.
Which is interesting, isn't it? Because you'd obviously seen Snatch first. So going
so yeah, if I'd seen Lock, Stock first, I might prefer Lock, Stock. I don't know. Again, I've not seen Snatch for a while, so I could be wrong. I don't know if maybe it had a bit more of an international flavor. I quite like that.
Yeah.
With Brad Pitt and all the other actors, American actors and stuff. But yeah, I think it's good. I think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread? Probably not, but I think it's a very solid, entertaining, fun movie. If you're looking for East End gangsters and stuff, this is the movie for you.
Well, this is the movie that kickstarted that trend off, didn't it? I mean, gangster movies generally in the British film industry gone away for a while. We hadn't really had anything that had been a big success. I know obviously Tarantino's playing in that field and over in the States in LA, and this is definitely influenced by him 100%. But we hadn't really had anything for a decade. I wouldn't have said that was a hit. And my God, we had a lot after this came out.
Well, I was going to say as well, because it's funny because sometimes when I go back and watch a film, I'm kind of like I'm a bit nonplussed by it sometimes because because that film is so influential, I feel like I've seen it done better elsewhere. So with this, again, it's not a bad film by any stretch of the imagination, but because I've seen Rock and Roller as well. I saw Rock and Roller, I really like. And I think I've seen him do it better personally. But I also think in some circles and in some ways, I've seen films that I appreciate more or better, because again, that was the first time I saw that style or that take on it. So again, it might be it's a kind of almost like a backwards view of it. It's again, I can clearly see the influence and where it's gone and what it's done, but because I've seen it maybe so late, maybe it didn't have as an impressionable effect on me as maybe yourself or other people that watched it when it first came out.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Because I was going to ask about your expectations before watching it, but you've answered that really, in that you kind of expect it to be. No, that's not fair. You knew it was going to have the rawness because it was the first production for Guy Ritchie, but also you'd seen what's come afterwards. So I guess you were hoping for, I don't know what the right word is, something akin to that, of the same level.
I guess you can kind of trip yourself up with expectations, as I've talked about on my podcast as well with certain films. But I try and go in with kind of zero expectations, because I always feel like I'm going to disappoint myself if I expect this to be the greatest film of all time, because nothing ever will be. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think everything works in it. I just think maybe some of once he nailed what he can do in his style, I think he only improves on it as Guy Ritchie goes on. But it's still a very, very, very solid film. For me, entertaining. It's got everything I want. It's quite interesting because it feels, and I'm sure we'll get onto it with the ending. I watched this on Amazon Prime. I think it's the director's cut, I believe. And I got a very much like a modern day. I say modern day, it's fucking ancient now, isn't it? It's like 20 years old now.
Yeah, 20 plus, yeah.
No, yeah, I say it's dead modern. But I felt like it was like almost like that generation or our generation's Italian Job.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, because especially with that ending, I got it during, but then when I saw the ending, I'm like, clearly, like, they love the Italian Job, and they're trying. You've got these flamboyant gangsters, you've got these Cockney geezers that are just after a little bit of something, and then at the end they may or may not have got what they want, but we're not quite sure.
I think
there you go.
It hits, because obviously 98 this came out, so it's 24 years old now, and I think it hits that point of like, we were back to being proud to be British at this point. I think we'd had Euro 96. We've had Trainspotting came out in 96 as well, which was like a massive thing for like the British film industry. Like, it was a really big success. And then we're into the next World Cup, and that fever in 98. And I think it's just hitting at a really key point. We've got Oasis and Blur, and we've got Britpop, and so it's just it feels like it's just out at that right time when we're ready to celebrate that. And you're right, it has that Italian Job feel. It definitely draws upon the Long Good Friday, which Guy Ritchie himself perfectly happy to admit that's the main influence on him.
Well, what's his name? Moriarty's in it, and he's in Long Good Friday, isn't he? I've not seen Long Good Friday, but I know from the IMDb.
Amazing film. I mean, so that grittiness and that comedy is complete. Like, somehow Ritchie does make it work here. He does manage to present a gritty world with, as you said, flamboyant characters and humorous moments, and it is a melding of those two films, really, those two styles, which is really difficult to do. And I think it's I think its imperfections actually make this a better movie. I mean, I haven't got around to watching Snatch again yet, because I'm going to be a stickler. I'm going to watch them in order, and I'm only going to watch them after I've recorded the podcast on the film before. I
like it. I like you've got
how
rules.
My brain works. Yeah, absolutely.
You have your rules. I appreciate that. I think that's good though, because then you won't get as much crossover.
That's it. I don't want to taint it. I don't want to really try and look at Stath and how he grows across those movies. But yeah, I think he does do something special here. And you're right, he's gone on to be a better filmmaker, as most people would do.
Yeah, sure.
I would equate it to that kind of, it's that first album that almost feels better because it's rawer. It's if Snatch is Pulp Fiction, then Lock, Stock is Reservoir Dogs, and Pulp Fiction is by any measure a much better movie than Reservoir Dogs. But Reservoir Dogs has that rawness and that like edge and that like it feels a bit dangerous, and it feels a bit, as you said, grimy and dirty, and I think Lock, Stock has that feeling too.
Yeah, I think you are right. It might not be as, like you said, polished.
Definitely not.
But it's still, I think it's like maybe for me, it's like, this is a good, juicy, quarter pounder cheeseburger. But with like Snatch, I feel like I've got the steak. Like I've got what it was originally, or what it should have been, or what it could have been. Again, the quarter pounder is fucking excellent. It's not bad. That's in any state of the world. Again, I've not watched Snatch for a while, but I just remember it being a bit snappier. The pacing was a bit better. It was a bit more like, it kind of whirled you around a bit more. It was a bit more kind of frantic, manic. I like that energy. I think with this, there is a lot of kind of like stuff they could have just had get a bit more work in the editing room or something, just snappier cuts or something. Again, nothing wrong with any of this. It's just not as polished, but I do agree there is a rawness to it, and there's almost like a kind of, not, what's the word, amateur filmmaking to it. There's like, and again, obviously it's his first film and stuff, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, like you've said. It does give it a pomp and a power, and it does grab you, like from the get-go. You're in, and I'm enjoying the monologues and stuff. I'm enjoying the introduction of all these wacky characters, because it is wacky. It is a wacky film,
definitely.
Like, I don't think I've ever heard anyone describe it as such, because they're like, oh yeah, it's dead cool, and it's got this, it's got geezers in, it's got guns and all this, while I was a kid, because I would have been 10 in 1998, so it probably wasn't the right time for me to watch that anyway. I don't think I would have necessarily appreciated it, but I am glad I waited, because I was laughing all the way through it, because I thought this is brilliant. I think the script is really sharp, really, really good. Wasn't it Sting's wife who kind of found the script and kind of, I'm forgetting her name now.
Trudy Styler, yeah.
Trudy, that's it, yeah. And she kind of found it, and it was a bit rough and roughshod and not really well written out and stuff, but there was an energy to it. There was something special that she saw in this kind of, to quote Aladdin, a diamond in the rough.
Absolutely, yeah. So she'd seen his initial short movie, I think, Guy Ritchie short movie, and then sought him out and found the script. Yeah, absolutely. And there's lots of interesting behind the scenes stories to do with how people were cast, and we've obviously got non-actors playing parts in this.
Yeah.
How it wasn't going to they couldn't get distribution in America, and it was basically all going to fall through. And then through, I think, Trudy Styler again, and through Sting, Tom Cruise got a phone call and was asked to turn up to an American press screening, a buyer screening, I think they call it. And he turned up and he watched it and he loved it. And then that was basically enough. Like, Tom Cruise walked in the room and watched the film and laughed and enjoyed it. So therefore it got bought and got distribution. And it does have that sense of, like, as you said before, and as I think we can talk about with the Stath, because we should probably talk about them at some point.
Sure, yeah. We're getting there.
That underdog spirit has that sense, doesn't it? Of, like, just over $1 million budget. It's working. It's got a lot to work against to try and claw its way up and be a success.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is very much. You've got to appreciate it. Like we said, it takes a lot for any films to get made, and for anyone to be given a decent spotlight. And the fact that Trudy found it, thought there was something to it, thought there was a rawness and energy, a power for this storytelling, for this type of storytelling, is amazing. And, love or loathe Guy Ritchie, you can't, he is a very talented filmmaker. Maybe not all of his films are hits, but he does hit the nail on the head. And I think having Statham in that, like we said, he was the kind of the plucky young geezer, selling his wares on the street and stuff. and that energy does come across. And I read that Jason Fleming, who's in the film, and I love him in almost everything he's in as well. They were taking the piss out of him because he's the only one who hadn't committed a crime, didn't have a criminal record. So everyone's like, oh, all right, clean shirt or whatever. They'd just be like, and he's like, all right, like you said, they've hired real gangsters, criminals. People, with records and reputations, and I think that adds a level of kind of realism, but also a level of kind of cheeky British humor as well. There's like humor is very, very different, obviously, all over the world, and if you're from different cultures, you might not necessarily get humor, the humor of a different culture, primarily, but. There is something like quite uniquely British about this, and I think you're right. It's not like a flag waving alt-right parade or something like that, or anything like that. It's a plucky underdog spirit of people trying to scrape by, get by as best they can, find the best situation, get out, do what they need to, all the way through this. They're trying to like sell off stuff, the guns, or sell off, just any bit of money, and that tends to be what gets everybody in trouble, is them trying to make more money than they have. Like Nick the Greek as well. I think he's a great character in this, and we're trying to get he's brings out a massive wad of money, and he's like, oh yeah, just knock 100 quid off it though, and they're like, fuck off, you can afford this, you
could shoot a couple of dozen donkeys with that. Absolutely, yeah. Some
great dialogue as well. I think he's one of my some choice dialogue. One of my favorite quotes was when they're trying to break into the big weed kind of cellar place with the cage and everything, and they start shooting him with the BB gun, and he's like, oh, I've just been shot. Oh, I've just been shot as well. And he's like, we'll both of you, with everyone, just stop being shot for 2 minutes. I just thought, fucking genius. I was on the floor laughing. But I think if any kind of, again, it's a Guy Ritchie story. It's a Jason Statham story. These characters are very lived in and are very real because they're basically just these guys, the young, wannabe kind of big name actors that are trying their best to get somewhere, and and they believe in it. And Dexter Fletcher, there's absolute huge names in this that go on to do much better things, or not better but bigger things. Or Dexter Fletcher's he's directing now and stuff, and Jason Fleming's all over the place. Statham, Vinnie Jones is in stuff. I think his acting,
and he had a hot moment for a while.
Yeah, he did have a hot moment. I think his best acting is probably in this. Maybe that and Mean Machine. Snatch, yeah. And I think after that, he just goes off the rails a bit, and he just becomes the hooligan, and that's it. That's all he can do. But there you go. But yeah, I think it's great, and I think the fact that it even got made is wonderful. It's a true opportunity that was grabbed with both hands and taken by these young actors, writers, and directors.
Yeah, it's what I've come to coin. Ritchie's Cockney Guns and Geezers type films, isn't it? And that sadly, even King Arthur fits into that, which he really shouldn't have done.
I remember seeing the trailer and I went, right.
Oh man, I didn't watch it for the longest time, but as you said earlier, I'm a completist, and I sat and watched it, and I can now have an opinion because I have seen it. That's all I'll say. All right, so I think at some point we should probably outline, just in case anybody's listening and hasn't seen the movie, exactly what happens. Do you fancy giving a little plot synopsis? Good luck.
I'll try. Yeah,
that's why I've asked you to do it.
Oh, you prick. So it is starts off with it's a gambling game. There's a specific gambling game, and there's a group of kind of these again up and comer lads, kind of just proper geezers is probably the best way to describe them. They're on the street, they're trying to sell stolen wares, and the coppers run after them and stuff. So they managed to get enough money together to enter a secret kind of poker game with a guy called Hatchet Harry, who is a top level kind of gangster in the area, who is known to be doing some very dodgy shit. And you see one scene of him beat another guy with a dildo because he works out of like a sex shop.
Like a porn baron, isn't he?
Yeah, porn baron. That's probably the best way to describe it. And the young lad gets in there, and he he basically is really good at reading people and reactions, and that's his trick. And so he believes he can win this game. However, Hatchet Harry has an inside man, and he's got this little kind of machine attached to his leg, which is telling him what the other cards are in the other
very
people's hands.
Goldfinger.
Yeah, I thought it was a very like
lifted from that. Yeah,
it was kind of that whole thing. I mean, it was a bit weirder with the kind of tappy leg thing, but I guess it's kind of like Morse code or something. It must be tapping away at, because both older fellas, they probably know how to do Morse code, and yeah, so the young lad, he loses the game only after he said, "Oh, I can't make this bet. I can't afford to. No one's going to lend me the money." And Hatch Harry says, "I'll lend you the money." And then by the end of the game, he's in debt to Harry by, was it 500 grand? I think.
Yeah, $500,000.
Which is and he has 10 days or a week.
I think. Yeah,
a week to get the money together. And because his mates lent him the money, they are also included. And obviously, they're going to cut off fingers. And then his dad who has a bar, that could be taken away from him. His dad could be killed. His dad is played by Sting, which kind of took me out of the film a little bit. I'll be honest. It was kind of like, oh, Sting's here, because he doesn't really do anything. He's just there. I don't think it necessarily needed to be Sting.
No,
I found it a bit distracting. It's not like June or something where he makes this big, and he's acting his tits off. It's kind of just like, well, yeah, Sting, yeah,
it is exactly that. Yeah.
He's just there. So I found that a little
international markets, I presume.
I get it. I totally get it. I understand why he was in there, obviously, Trudy and everything. But it didn't really click for me, that particular person in that particular role. But yeah, that was one of the bugaboos I had with the film, and not many, but just that one. And yeah, so they have a week to figure out how to get this money, and they find out that their neighbors are some hardcore gangsters as well. And they're going to rob a place that is basically selling this high quality weed. They're growers of high quality weed, and they are going to kind of hold them up, take the weed and the money, and then sell it back to the guy. This is where it gets complicated, and only gets more and more complicated. They're going to sell it back to him, even though it's his weed.
Yeah, unwittingly, they don't realize, to be fair.
They don't know this, but this is what's going to happen, because the guy they're selling it to is going to sell it to another guy, and that happens to be the gangster who owns or runs that weed sweatshop, growing place, whatever you call it. I'm not up with the drugs lingo. I don't know what you call it.
Me neither.
The hyper whatever they call it, hydrogenator, whatever they call those hydronic things. They grow weed there, basically. It's a big place for growing weed. But that is basically the plot. I think
basically the plot. I mean, it's interesting because some people talk about it as being convoluted and complicated, which I think is unfair. I think it's multi-stranded, and as you said, all those strands come together at the end. But I don't think it's hard to follow. If you have 4 different groups, right? Yeah. And as long as you can keep straight what these 4 different groups are, and it's not that hard, we kind of knit the Greek bopping in between them, really.
Yeah. He's got like the connective tissues. So you've got like the guns come into it, because Hatchet Harry asks Nick the Greek to get, not Nick the Greek, his
Harry the Baptist, the
Baptist, to get some Scousers or some Northern monkeys, as he describes them, which I love that whole section. I don't know if it's that kind to Scousers, though. I think it's probably,
it's very much the like the 118 stereotypical. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's like the Harry Enfield sketch, if you remember that. Like, calm down. It reminds me of that a lot. So I don't know if it's maybe a little stereotypical. And there was a couple of like, there's some I could have done without some of the kind of homophobic stuff. There was a little bit of that this time, but again, I'm watching it fresh, so I don't know. It was a different time. We're talking 20 years ago, so obviously we've got to take that in.
It doesn't play now. You're right. A couple of times I was a little bit pulled out myself with some of the language. That's the core concept of the other show that I do with Tony, is us looking at things through a modern lens. And you look at that, and it is a problem. Yeah, I get people. It's very brief.
I will say that it is very brief. It's like a little monologue. I think there is some kind of like you Nancy, or you lady.
There's some lads banter back and forth about you're not a proper man. Yeah.
What I found very interesting as well about the film was that a lot of the violence is cut away from.
Yeah, it's all off screen.
Which I didn't expect. Like because obviously it's all about these hardcore gangsters. There's crime. Like you do get blood and stuff, but the act of the violence is definitely off screen. And I guess that kind of helps, highlight the comedy of it all. Because you're not going, oh fucking hell, that was horrible. You know, you still get blood, you still get dead bodies, you still get stuff, but all the actual, and I guess during this time, the kind of MPAA or the BBFC were probably rating very violent films quite harshly, maybe, depending, and they probably wanted a bigger audience to see this. So I believe it's a 15. I want to say it's a 15.
I think it is an 18. I think it does come in.
Still an 18?
I think so, because of the language.
Yeah, probably.
I think it's something like 128 fucks.
It's more than I've had in my lifetime. Can you say that?
Not to mention, she said, kind of slurs and
true. Yeah,
Rory chucks in a couple of "see you next Tuesdays" as well.
But then, like obviously times have changed as well. In the rating standards, and obviously there's always like, oh well, that wasn't as bad as that, so we'll have to give that lighter, a lighter kind of rating and stuff. Deadpool was a 15, and that has like multiple sex scenes, bodily dismemberments, foul language, and that still got a 15 over here. So it does vary. But yeah, I found that very interesting because I was like, I expected it to be more violent, and it wasn't. But it wasn't like it wasn't not at the film's detriment. I wasn't like, because violence I can take or leave, as long as it's done well and there's a story behind it and there's a point to it, or it's entertaining, it's ridiculous and stupid, that's fine. But yeah, I was surprised by that when I watched it.
It's definitely a creative choice. It's not. I feel it's more creative than it is commercial. I hear what you're saying about that. It would provide you with more opportunity to get the rating you wanted. But I think as it's an 18 anyway, it doesn't feel like they've tried to barter that down. I think they were quite happy knowing they were appealing to an adult audience. I think what it does is, as you said, they wanted to keep that balance between it being a gangster drama, but with the wacky comedy, which Italian Job is famous for. And you said it. I don't want to just say your words back at you, but it allows that careful balance to be maintained all the way through.
Yeah, I agree with my words. So there you go.
Of course you do.
I would agree with my words. But yeah, I think it's like you said, it's expertly done. I don't think it's overly complicated. No. I've seen much more overly complicated films. Like you said, there's these core groups, and if you can follow each strand, and then if you notice, it's like something like Trick or Treat, which has multiple stories going on at multiple different times, and they do cross over, though mostly they're told one at a time. There is crossover and slight, different things occur, and you notice little things about it. And I think this one, there is that element a bit, but it's all kind of still going on. It's all current. It's all happening now in real time. But yeah, I had no issue following it, and I, as I am prone to do, I might look at my phone for 2 minutes or something, or someone will tweet me or something, and and I'll lose concentration. I'll go back to the film, and I didn't go, oh shit, I'll have to rewind. I don't know what the hell's going on. What's this? It's not a mind fuckery film. It's not. I don't think it's hard to follow. There's not that many characters. There's a few, sure, but I think if you know where they are, who they are, their influence to other people, their relationship to other people, I found Pirates of the Caribbean more complicated than this.
Yeah.
Like, who's got the coin? I've got the coin. Where are we going? Oh, no, he got the coin now. Now we're going in another circle. That whole film is just a circle.
Yeah.
Until they reach the finale. As entertaining as it is, that's that. And I found that more confusing and hard to follow than this.
And there is some narrative trickery in this, isn't there? As you mentioned before, you get the Samoan Joe pub scene when, as they're walking in, which is a great moment, as they're walking in, a guy comes out on fire, and they're like, oh, well, and they walk into the pub anyway. And then you get to see that story played out later in the film. So we do have that kind of like elliptical narrative editing. But I think the narrative structure, the cross-cutting between the different stories all the way through is actually really well planned out and then really well edited. Because as you said, we have these four main guys. We have Ed, Bacon, Soap, and Tom, which is your core characters. And you've got is it Nick Moran, I think is his name, plays Ed. He's the one that doesn't seem to have gone on to do as much as everyone else. Then you've got
No, I think
Jason
he was
Statham
in.
as gone.
Yeah, sorry, I think he was in a Harry Potter film or a couple.
He
maybe.
was, yeah.
I'm not sure, but
As you said, you
it.
consider what everyone else has gone on to do. He seems to be the
Yeah.
one that's surprisingly, as the ostensible lead in this, has gone on to have not as big a career as everyone else. You know, I think you've got Jason Statham as his best mate, Bacon, and I think you can feel his charisma on the screen. He probably says the least of anybody, but does draw your eye. It's funny how some people can just do it; they draw your eye. And I did notice actually on this watch, he does get the first line in the movie, and he does get the last line in the movie as well, which is really interesting.
Yeah. Obviously that's a creative choice. I think what's interesting about him is he's not really got an arc in the story for himself, like a personal arc. It's just get the money. You know, we need to get the money, and that's what's going to save our lives and all of our.
He's the calm one of the group, though, isn't he? He's always got a level head.
Yeah, I like that as well, because that's not what I expected from a Statham character, because they all start fighting and he's like, right, fuck you now, calm down. You know, we've got to sort this out. We've got to figure it out. If we fight amongst ourselves, we'll never get it done. And I was like, oh shit, he's the nice one. You know? Yeah. And I will say one thing I didn't really get, but apparently this makes more sense when I read the IMDb, was that Jason Fleming's character keeps being called fat.
Oh,
even though he's rake thin. But apparently the guy who plays Nick the Greek was supposed to be that character, and that would make a lot of sense. So I don't get why they didn't just cut those lines or turn it into a different insult. It didn't really work for me. I was like, he's clearly not fat. He's not sensitive about his weight. You can see he's not that bothered about the joke. It doesn't really work. But it was just, I was just like, that's a weird choice to just keep that in, even though it's a totally different actor with a totally different look. Like if he made fun of him because he was a ginger or something. Not that I'm condoning making fun of him, but you know,
everybody tweet Dan as a ginger, please.
Hashtag hates gingers.
Yeah.
No, don't cancel me, please. I'm so careful not to be cancelled. But yeah, like that was just a weird thing. But yeah, you again, he's not given a lot of dialogue. He's not given a lot of. I mean, he's on screen a lot of the time, you know, for majority of it. And I like when they're all getting drunk, that scene where they're all like, they get all the money and straight away, what do? They go for a piss up. Yeah. They get some of the wacky backy out, start smoking it. He's very much the kind of more chilled out one. He's the more sensible one. He's not one that's bringing knives to the pub. He's not the one that's trying to sell off everything. You know, he's not the gambler. So he's basically the most likable, arguably the most likable character in the film.
I think that's true. He's sort of the grifter, isn't he? He's like because I have read some criticisms of them, you know, of this idea of their not quite caricatures, but they, you know, you could kind of boil them down to their main character trait, and they don't have really any depth below that, which I think is probably fair. But I think the actors bring more to their performance, and I think the way they deliver, which are catchphrasey lines, it has been written to be quotable and zingery and catchphrasey. I think the way they deliver that brings it to life. And I think that core group of four who we follow through this, and we want to see succeed, even though, you know, they're doing some nefarious things, feel like a grounded, realistic group of people, whereas everyone around them feel, as you said, like cartoony or overblown
caricatures.
Yeah, they feel like those kind of.
I think as well, there's a lack of obviously there's so many characters anyway that you have to keep track of and know what they want and how they're going to get it and what they're going to do and again keeping track of that plot. Again, it's not. I don't think it's complicated, but I do think you do need to watch it and pay attention as well. I don't think you can just fall asleep at the wheel and just expect the movie to be good right at the end. I think there is a tabula rasa aspect that you can put yourself on one of those archetypes. You've got the one that is a bit dark and a bit mental. You've got the one who's a bit of a gambler, a bit of a chancer. You've got the one who's just a genuinely nice guy. He's happy to be there. Might like the occasional toke or drink. And then you've got the guy who's out there trying to make a buck off anything. I think everyone has an aspect. Those are very singular aspects that anyone could identify with on some level. And I think that's what you need. Again, you need a little bit of a grounding point. against those caricatures as well, and the wacky antics, if you could call them that do occur, even though there is a level of seriousness and to the violence and a realism to the violence. It's not cartoon violence because we don't see it, and and again, I think you are absolutely right. I think the balance is razor thin. And I think it straddles the line just perfectly there. Again, I think my main issues with the film is maybe just pacing and editing. And maybe I don't know if the fisheye lens, I think that might have been overused because I was just like, okay, here we go again, But again, it's a young filmmaker trying shit out, so I get it.
Absolutely,
absolutely get it. And why wouldn't you? It's your opportunity to do stuff, to experiment, to do things, try things. Things might not work, might not turn out, but if you can work with that, you can roll with that. You can get something like Lock, Stock, which is great.
The violence when it is there does feel threatening, doesn't it? So when you've got the dog character, which is the leader of the gang next door, when he's got the guy hung up from the ceiling and the two partners working together and he's hitting golf balls out of another one's mouth, that feels quite dangerous and threatening. And obviously Vinnie Jones's Big Chris gets him at the end of the movie with the car door, very famous scene. Like I think even if people haven't seen Lock, Stock, they probably know of this moment in the movie where Vinnie Jones wails on Dog. Feels dark and dangerous, doesn't it?
Yeah, like everything with Dog is really intimidating. Even the stuff with Breaker, he's obviously the short guy with a big fro. He's meant to kind of, it's almost like a Soul Glow type. Coming to America style. Shiny fro. But like you get that monologue from who is it? Somebody who talks about Breaker. Famous face.
Oh, Danny John Jules, Cat from Red Dwarf.
Cat from Red Dwarf. I knew it was somebody. I was like, shit. I was like, oh shit, it's Cat from Red Dwarf without going, it's Cat from Red Dwarf.
And he gets subtitles because of his Cockney rhyming slang.
But again, I totally understand. We get it. And that's intimidating. And he has a presence. And I'm always concerned when someone was in his presence, even though he's a small of stature. He looks a little ridiculous, but the performance is there, and you believe that he will fuck you up. These massive guys are working for him. They don't bat an eye. They're like, he's making fun of them and calling them dicks and whatever. And you believe it. And when he goes into that situation where it's a big shootout and the confusion happens between Dog's gang and his gang, it's scary and it's disturbing, and it's again, you don't see it, it's not something that's explicit and shown, but he's the only one that's surviving by the end of it until the very last minute when they run in, they grab the stuff and go out, and then he dies. Spoilers for the film.
We should say that at the top. The spoilers for the film, definitely.
It's 20. It's over 20 years old. Come on,
it is.
I'm sorry, but yeah, I think all the gangster characters, even though again they're these wacky caricature archetypes, a lot of them were gangsters, a lot of them knew real gangsters. There's a believability to that insanity, like a Bronson or something like that, or a Chopper with Eric
Interesting.
Bana. There's that believability, but also that humor to it as well, and the darkness balancing all out with that. And again, I think this is a film that balances all those elements very, very expertly.
There's a definite morality to the film, isn't there? Because as you said, Rory Breaker dies, all the key kind of dangerous gangsters, the villains, if you like, get a comeuppance by the end. And those that live by a moral code, even if they're willing to beat the shit out of somebody and to beat them to death with a car door, he's driven to do that by his morality because his son was put in danger. Little Chris was put in danger. The rest of the movie, we've actually seen Big Chris, Vinnie Jones's character, abide by this almost kind of samurai-esque, Ronin-esque like moral code where he's, he doesn't take people out, doesn't hurt people unless he has to. His mere presence is enough. So I think the film does definitely offer that sense of there's levels of criminality within the world that we're in.
Yeah, of course. Well, it's like in prison. Like I did a podcast on top 5 prison movies, so I went full deep. And I've visited a prison as well, which was a very scary experience. But maybe not for this podcast. It's a long story. but there is a ranking. There is, if you're a paedophile or you're a sex offender, to be, you may be treated and or killed, because of that, that sort of thing. If you've killed a paedophile, you might be a hero within the prison system. People don't talk about what they're in for, because if they find out, it might endanger them or something. It's kind of the code. So there is that, and I think there's very much that within this. However, even though the good guys, effectively get off scot-free, and the guns, I think it's maybe the complicated thing is just keeping track of who has the guns. I think that's probably more complicated, the complicated idea. But again, it comes full circle anyway. You find out eventually, even if you forget where they are, they turn up very soon and you see them again and you know who's got them where. But the good guys don't necessarily win.
No.
And they're not morally, again, like you said, they're not morally necessarily good people. They are criminal people. They are doing criminal activities. They're beating up the traffic warden, Rob Brydon, which I was happy to see. Again, I love all the familiar faces as well. I was like, oh shit, it's him. And oh shit, it's him. I was watching it, and I watched a young Sherlock Holmes recently, and not only does this film have a Moriarty, who is the actor who plays Hatchet Harry, but you have the young Sherlock Holmes, who is one of the weed sellers, plays the character of Jay. I think it's Nicholas Rowe, I want to say. I think that's his name.
Yeah, I've never seen young Sherlock Holmes,
Oh, you know what? I might do it this Christmas for the alternativity stories,
nice.
maybe.
There's my excuse.
Yeah, there you go. I might do. I'm not decided yet. I'm not 100% decided, but I might do it. We'll see. But I quite enjoy it. Spoilers. It's Chris Columbus, and it's very. If you like Harry Potter films, you can see the origin of the Harry Potter films and the style of Harry Potter films from Chris Columbus. Also has a post-credit scene, just so you know. Young Sherlock Holmes, one of the first, I think. But yeah, it's a great film, and I think, like you said, the like we were saying, the morality of it, it doesn't say, oh, if you just stand by, because the whole film, it's them. It's a lot of inaction from the heroes in a way. They don't affect the plot that much. The kind of stuff just happens around them, kind of like almost like a chaos theory type thing. It's just like, they do set off a chain of events, kind of like a chaos theory, and then it comes back around. But they don't. It doesn't explicitly say they win, or that they're good people, or that everything's going to work out for them. Not at all. It says, that, we're not actively violent. We didn't kill anybody. We didn't do any evil things, potentially. We didn't, the people we were robbing were criminals. So, it's more like, they are kind of good, chaotic good, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it never outwardly says, these are the good guys, even though they're your kind of characters you follow, and your protagonists. It never says, being a criminal and doing dodgy gambling deals is great, and stealing weed and money is good, and robbing expensive guns. It never actively says that, which is also interesting as well. It's another interesting kind of layer to the film and to the characters and to the ideas they were playing with and the stuff. But yeah, I think that does play in again to that Italian Job feel, because again, they're potentially dodgy people, not the dodgiest of people, but and there's that fun whether or not they got what they want. And again, I kind of like those endings because you can kind of make up your own mind about it.
Absolutely, yeah.
You can go, oh, they got away, they lived, they're fine, they've got all the money, they're great. Or you can be like, no, they got arrested and they went down for years. You can have your cake and eat it. It's like those choose your own adventure books.
I love it. Yeah. All right, let's cycle back around to the Stath then, because you said something really interesting before about how, like, perhaps him being the quiet, sensible, these aren't the exact words you used, obviously, but the level-headed character within the group is not necessarily what you might have expected. So you're obviously bringing in your experience of him as an actor in his later work, and I look at him in this first one. So why do you think that is?
I think with certain actors, like we talked about, like the ones that he's inspired by, there is a set expectation. Like I said, when I saw Wildcard, or like 2/3 of Wildcard, there was an expectation that it was going to be an action film because Statham was in it. I expected him to kick some ass and to shoot guys or to do whatever, or to rob something, and it's not that film is not really that. And I think when I look back at it and did research on it, I was like, oh shit, it was meant to be something a bit different for him and his career. And I think there is a stereotypical. There's a stereotypical Stallone. There's what we expect from Clint Eastwood. We have expectations on certain actors to do certain things. You were talking about large filmographies. Look at Nicolas Cage or look at Samuel Jackson.
Yeah.
We expect Samuel Jackson to be Samuel Jackson in whatever role he does. And there are some ones where he's a little bit more of a character actor and he'll really change himself or do something a bit different. And then same with Nick Cage as well. But we still kind of expect a level of consistency because it's the same person, same voice, same body, same skills, and we there is an expectation. Again, we can get in our way a little bit. And I think I didn't want to have expectations coming into this film. And I tried not to. And again, I very, very much enjoyed it. Yeah, there's stuff I don't really like about it, but it's still very, very solid in filmmaking, storytelling, acting, whatever, cinematography, you name it. But yeah, I think sometimes there is an expectation from a person, from an actor, from we expect Nick Cage to be a bit weird, and in most films he's pretty weird, And people have gone into Morbius recently expecting Jared Leto to be weird and wacky and over the top and method actory. But apparently, from what I've heard, he's like, no, he just plays the role as an actor would. That is just, he fills his job role. He's like, I played Michael Morbius. It's not any over the top or weirdness or anything like that. He's not drinking marinara sauce to become Italian or anything like that. It's just, he's just done that role. I think Statham, there will be an expectation, I think, from a lot of people coming into this, like myself, that he would be maybe a bit more like his character in Snatch, which is very similar character. But I think he's got a bit more agency. He's a bit more of a hard man.
A bit more verbose.
Yeah, that as well. Yeah, a bit more wordy. There's you can kind of see it there. What his I felt like he nailed what he wanted to be or his style, because there are moments in this where they look a little bit as actors do sometimes. They look a bit like not deer in headlights, but something where it's like they're a little off, or they're just a little bit, maybe a bit nervous, or
agreed.
Something's a little. And that's another thing I noticed, just because they're a bit green, I think is the best term to use. This is a big film, big opportunity, lots of money behind it. So maybe there was a little bit of nervousness, or not sure if it's going to work. Will we pull it off? I've done films and stuff where I've been in something and I went, yeah, this will be great. And then I'm like, oh no, it wasn't. Not necessarily because of me or anybody else. It just didn't turn out as well as we thought. But yeah, I think there is an element of they've not quite got that je ne sais quoi. He hasn't got his je ne sais quoi yet. I think Statham. I think he's just like, I'm going to be this guy. I'm this guy. This is me playing this guy. I don't think we get the Stath, if you want to call it.
Agreed.
The stereotypical Stath until maybe Snatch or further, when he goes, no, like I think the best word is kind of finding your feet. So like in acting terms, you have to get your shoes, find your walk, find how the character moves. And I think he hadn't done that just yet.
No, I think that's fair.
And I'm not saying he's a poor actor. I'm not saying anything. I'm saying, I've been in shows and I'm like, I have no fucking idea what I'm doing. We'll see how this turns out. I'm nervous as fuck. It does happen. You're just not quite sure sometimes. And it's not necessarily you or the performance or anything. It's just might be where your head's at or where you are. And yeah, I think there is an element of that with him, and I think with the other actors as well. But I also think maybe the other actors had a bit more experience than him, from what I've heard. Like obviously he's had all these different lifestyles he's led and stuff he's done, and I think these guys have been like theatre and acting and drama students from day one. So I think
you can.
They know.
Yeah, you can always tell when the scene either cuts to or features, or we go from one scene to another, and you can tell who are more seasoned pros and who are the more non-actors, or people who have been not necessarily stunt cast. I wouldn't say they're stunt cast, but people who, you've got a box, haven't you, playing the doorman, Hatchet Harry's club when they're playing the card game, and so I think you can tell those ones who are not trained or not experienced actors. I mean, I think it's a fascinating trend we seem to have in British filmmaking, because I thought before, thinking of, the Stath is the one we're going to talk about today, but there are other people within this who are non-actors. Barry the Baptist, I think, is another guy who's brought in for his persona on screen rather than the fact that he's an actor. It does seem to be something we tend to do. I mean, obviously Ken Loach is a massive proponent of this, but I love Shay Meadows. Shay Meadows is one of my favorite filmmakers, and he does this all the time as well. And you look at the people who've gone on to have careers because he's discovered them or he's given them a chance, or it's a really interesting trend we seem to have in British filmmaking.
And I think this is Vinnie Jones' first acting role as well. So he's a non-actor. He's a footballer. He's pundit and commentator, whatever he was doing at the time. And this is his first acting role. And I think I said earlier, I think it's one of his best, because I think it's not over the top and manic and mad like some of his later roles, like Eurotrip or The Juggernaut or things like that. There's I'm the Juggernaut, bitch. There's a believability to it. It's still over the top and wacky, but there's I think him having a kid there does ground it a little bit as well, and it makes it a bit more believable. And again, there's a lot of fun there, a lot of humor there between them, and again, morality wise as well, he has that code and everything.
Does,
and he's excellent. I'd arguably say Sting was my least favorite, and again, he's an actor. He has been in other things, Quadrophenia and June and lots of other stuff. The Bride, I think he did a Frankenstein movie and some other stuff. He's actually more seasoned than Jones was. I think he was probably had the least strongest performance out of all the multitude of actors that are in it, for as however long or short they're in it. And again, it is top quality British acting talent that is on screen, and talent behind the camera as well, just all over. And again, this is just a very I like these humble beginnings for Statham, because it's nice to see how he grows, and I'm sure throughout your podcast it'll be interesting to see him growing confidence and kind of get over this nervousness that maybe he had. And again, maybe that was it, that he's surrounded by all these, not only are they surrounded by hardened criminals, he's also surrounded by seasoned actors, practiced. They've done the work, they've done the time, they've done the auditions, and he probably hasn't. He's very new to this and a bit not sure of his footing.
He's been a painted dancer, he's been a market trader, he's been a diver, he's been a model. Absolutely, and he's perhaps a little bit out of his depth here, but I think, as we said right back at the start, he does enough. He has enough charisma, enough presence. I do feel drawn to him in scenes when perhaps other people are doing more, and I think clearly Guy Ritchie was drawn to him and a lot of other people, because it doesn't take a long time. We're looking at a couple of years, suddenly he's been cast in Hollywood movies opposite Jet Li, and so there's definitely something about him immediately.
I definitely saw, I think I read somewhere that kind of the whole thing about the guns at the end was a reshoot, initially they got away with the money, and people reacted poorly to that,
and rightly so.
And I think they made the right choice in doing the scene, but I definitely saw a sneak of the Stath when they're arguing over who's going to phone him.
Yeah,
because he gets kind of like, he's like, it's not like, I'm chilled out now, I'm the Stath.
I've got him on the fucking phone.
He's fucking ringing. All that. It's like that was. I was like, there he is. I can see him. He's coming out. He's coming out of his cocoon. It's coming for us.
Definitely.
There's definite, maybe, I don't know how much time had passed, or, if it had been a year or two, or if it had been another films by this point, whatever, or had more practice. But there's definitely like a little hint there of him, the more kind of stereotypical aggressive Stath, as we know.
That's a really interesting insight, because I did read that it took a couple of years from kind of the start of the process to the distribution to getting out in the cinemas. So perhaps, depending on where this reshoot took place within that process, you're right, he'd gone on and been in Snatch, or had some acting lessons or done this and done that. Yeah, that's really interesting.
Like could have taken, acting classes are available. If you don't have to necessarily go to university or drama school, there are people and places you can learn and stuff. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if he did. And then he felt more confident. And when it came to that scene, and again, played expertly by the actors, written well. And again, I think it's a solid ending. It's the right ending for that film and for that story. And it's hilarious and it's brilliant, and they're arguing about it. And I love how ancient all the phones are. I was like, yes, these are cool. But yeah, it's a really fun film, and I'm excited. I'm going to see if I can try and keep up with the Statham filmography as well with your podcast. See if I can keep up, because I want to watch Snatch again, and there's a lot of the other ones I'm either going to come on and watch for you, or I'm going to try and watch, because there's a lot I haven't seen as well. I've only seen, you said it's 40 plus, and I've only seen about 10 or so, maybe more. So yeah, I definitely want to carry on the tradition of back to the filmography. One
every couple of weeks, we can hopefully find
do that easy.
All right. So I think we've got into it, haven't we? I think we've talked about lots of that. We talked about the Stath.
Sure.
That's what we think. Shall we consider what everybody else thinks?
Oh, yes, please.
So what I thought I'd do for this section is consider some fan reviews of the film, but especially focus them in on the Stath's performance within it. And what I've decided to do is to cull these from Letterboxd, a service I use quite frequently. What about yourself? Are you a Letterboxd user?
I usually go on there if I'm doing research, because they make these really intense lists of stuff, and can be very specific sometimes. If you're looking for, for example, when I was collating all the Shock Phobia Fest and alternativity stories stuff, anything that's kind of, because a lot of films won't say that they're set around, Christmas necessarily, or if I'm looking for those ones that have almost barely set around those things, especially the Christmas ones, that's usually a really good place to look at those lists, because people often do better research than yourself. So why not steal from the best? So yeah, it's really good for kind of finding a group of films that have a unique style or take, or the same directors, or if you're looking for just all of the exploitation films from 1900 to 2010, they've got a list for you. So yeah. I think it's a great service. I don't sign up to it or subscribe to it, but I do visit the website a lot.
As with all of them, it's not perfect, but I think what I like about it is that it's user driven, rather than being an algorithm website or anything like that. It's of course there are still going to be flaws and holes in picking it, but it's some people go on there, they try to be glib and funny rather than actually say anything insightful.
Yeah. I think it's kind of somewhere I think it's the kind of perfect middle ground between a Rotten Tomatoes, which, like we said, we talked about, we're not massively keen on, because it's not a good kind of aggregate for quality. But then it's also not like an Amazon review where it's like, I really like this film, it's got boobies. Exactly. 5 stars, it's somewhere in the middle, where you've got your average fans and average kind of film watchers, but then you've also got, Josh Trank did a review on his own Fantastic Four film, which I quite enjoyed. You've got these top level, well respected and practiced film, either reviewers or stars or directors, writers, you name it, all within this one kind of centralized website, which I think is it's quite a unique space, actually.
Yeah, and you can decide who to pay attention, who not, which is, you learn very quickly who are the ones you want to read and ones you want to avoid.
Absolutely. Well, I read yours all the time, Jack.
Well, I appreciate your support. All right, so I've got a very quick one to start with from Emily Housel. Obviously, I'm going to say all these people's names wrong. They're never going to hear it anyway, so who cares? No. She says, way too much key lighting and the color grading is kind of gross, which we touched upon. But they played I Want to Be Your Dog. Also, Jason Statham. Jason Statham. I quite like the point of that. Because like we said in our review, he's not the main character. He's kind of silent and stoic and in the corner, but he does have something about him already in this movie that draws you into him. And I think that really short, couple of words concisely puts that across.
I mean, the film opens with him as well. It literally starts on him. The first shot is of him, and you hear his voice before you even see him. So you get a sense of him. You get a sense of who he is. He's this Cockney geezer, like we've said. And yeah, absolutely, it's kind of a unique cherry on the cake to see how he kind of ascends in his career.
Ian Hobbs, he says, when it comes to performances, the film offers a great cast in the early years and features so many great quips and jokes between the group, and their chemistry works so well. Jason Fleming, Jason Statham, and Vinnie Jones were easily the highlights of the entire film, as their characters are played to perfection. I couldn't believe it was Statham's debut, as he was so funny and perfect in the role. Big fan of the Stath.
Yeah.
Thomas, just Thomas.
I know him well.
He agrees with you. He says, all in all, I enjoyed Snatch a bit more, but Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels is also a damn good crime comedy. And obviously I'll get into that a bit more in the next episode. He did also say though, I would also like to see more Jason Statham roles like in this film. I love his dry humor. So that idea of him being a bit more understated, maybe.
Understathamed.
Oh, you see, that's the magic that you can't account for that. It just comes from nowhere, comes from improvisation. And then last one that I pulled out was from a guy called Zach Milne. He said Guy Ritchie kicked the door down when he released this movie. Him and Jason Statham went on to have successful careers, and it all began here. Jason Statham really shows why he went on to success, with his charisma and charm just oozing out of him. So all very positive, but to be honest, I couldn't, and I trawled through a lot of reviews. I couldn't find any reviews that were negative about Jason Statham. There were negative reviews about the film, as there will be, but I couldn't find anything I was trying to be balanced, but everyone kind of said the same thing, like this is his first role, and we could understand why he's gone on to have such success.
Yeah, like we said, like you might not have the confidence that he might necessarily get in his further films, but the charm, the charisma, the character, he's got a unique look as well, and I think all of that kind of builds to it. And again, like clearly, not that the other guys have not had some level of success, but he is just skyrocketed to superstardom, and again, that's because of this, and because this is the beginnings, the humble beginnings of what we know of this Stathalution, as you so excellently put it. It's been great. I also noticed as well, like, because it's a Matthew Vaughn production company, I noticed that all the I was thinking about the actors, and I was like, they keep cropping up. So like Fleming and Fletcher in Kick-Ass and things like that. So you can kind of see where all the kind of links, the tenuous links between everybody, the spider's web, as we've talked about, again, all comes together in a way. And again, Vinnie Jones was in Mean Machine, which is a Matthew Vaughn film, and Statham's in that. So all connected.
And I believe they've all stayed quite close since as well. I watched watched an interview of Guy Ritchie, where me and Jace, we talk all the time, me and Flems, we talk all the time. I think they've all stayed really close, which is nice to feel like that kind of independent group have all come up together.
Yeah, I like that. It's very much like a kind of a League of Gentlemen type thing, where they all met together while they're relatively young and stayed tight while doing their own thing, and then sometimes coming together as well. It's great.
To finish, let's consider the box office, which is not necessarily always an arbitrator of quality, but it is an important industry measuring stick, unfortunately. As mentioned earlier, Lock, Stock was produced for 1.35 million, but what it accrued was 28.1 million across the global box office. So a subjective hit for anyone's money.
Yeah, you can't really argue with the numbers, can you? It's maths. The universal language. You can't argue or dismiss what an impact this film had box office wise. It's that for any independent film, that's amazing. So no wonder they were like, let's get this greenlit by Guy Ritchie. Let's get these guys back. Let's have him. Let's do that. Who's the guy in the production company? Give him layer cake. Let's do this. Absolutely makes, and again, the English film industry was on its arse. It was absolutely on its arse. So it needed something. I think you said that earlier, like it needed, this kind of Britpop, anarchic style to come along and again, shake things up and get people kind of interested in British film and English film and see what we can do as as storytellers, basically on the silver screen.
So, from your subjective point of view, I'm just going to ask every guest. We're going to get a choice of 3 categories. So,
Okay.
for you, from the Stath's filmography, is this a classic? Is this worth catching, or is it for completists only?
Okay. So classic, worth catching, or completist only. Okay. I don't think it's. Is it a classic within his filmography?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay,
So,
right. Not in general.
No, as a Stath, as a staple Stath, part of his Stath illusion, part of his filmography, where would you place it within those 3 categories?
It's tricky because it's not like if people are coming in looking for a Stath and a classic Stath, this isn't necessarily what you would call a classic Stath for me. But is it interesting to see his development? Is it interesting to see a kind of character he doesn't often play in a role where he's not really, again, necessarily that confident? Is it good to see a bit of vulnerability in an actor or a performer? Is that a good thing? That is down to you. But I think given his trajectory, given the quality of the film and the Guy Ritchie, creative decisions and the other performance in it, it's definitely a catch, but I'm not sure if it's a classic. I don't know if I've seen enough films to call it necessarily a classic, but again, me only just seeing it now and appreciating it for now and for what it is. And again, I know I've compared it to Snatch a lot, and again, I've not seen Snatch for a while. I'm going to say classic. I'm going to say classic,
okay,
just by a hair, only because it kind of informs his character as a person, as a performer, and where he goes next. Because obviously he works with Guy Ritchie a fair bit, I think more than probably most of the directors. Oh, I've seen The Mechanic as well. See, I keep remembering Statham films and keep popping. I'm like, oh, I've seen that, yeah. So I'm gonna, just by a hair, I'm gonna call it a classic because again, it's the humble beginnings, it's the style, it's the Cockney geezerness, it's the kind of uber violence, it's the foul mouth thing. It will inform who he is as a performer and an actor, and the roles he picks or the roles he takes going on. So just by the thinnest of margins, I'll call it a classic.
I love it. I think if not just for that moment that you picked out, which I think was such an insightful comment, that perhaps in that reshot ending, we see the beginnings of what is the true Stath.
The birth of the Stath.
Absolutely. Brill.
Yeah.
All right then, sir. Thank you very much for coming on, for helping me launch this show.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. You've done all the hard work.
Do you want to let people know where they can find you, your lovely show of your own, and what you have got coming up?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. Of course I do. I love talking about myself. I always do it on other podcasts as well. So it's Spider Dan and the Secret Balls. You can check all the stuff out on spiderdanandthesecretballs.com. That is BORES. I'm available on all good podcatchers, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, you name it, all the funny ones. I'm on YouTube as well. I don't do many videos. Mostly that's just for the Patreon. I do have a Patreon, so if you want to pay me, do that. As one of my patrons is I Am Jack's Musings, my favorite patron. I mean, they're all good. They're all great. And I've just got a couple of new ones. They're all good.
I'll let it out.
No, it's good. And yeah, so you can donate, you can read stuff. I've just compiled a list of collaborations on my website and on YouTube, so you can check out where I've guested on other people's shows. I've been on Jack's show, Season's Greetings, been on Tony's show, Comics in Motion, you name it. I've been everywhere. Angry Andy Reviews, all over the show. Check out all those amazing people as well, because they're brilliant. 20th Century Geek, all the good people, Femme on Film, Pop Gorillas as well. Make sure you check them out as well. All the good people. I'm great, but everyone is also of equal standing, and brilliant people, kind, caring, passionate, and just lovely. So yeah, and this has been lovely being on Back to the Filmography. And thank you for introducing me to Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels. It was excellent.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, thanks. I mean, there's a lot of great people in our group, but I think it's worked out brilliantly that you were my first guest on because of like where we've grown from and where we're going to. I think in our podcasting relationship, I think it's been a real treat. And you've also got Wizard Month coming up, hopefully fairly soon.
Yeah.
So that's something for everyone to look forward to.
So June is going to be Wizard Month. I'm going to start working on it very soon in the next week or so. I've got a few that I want to just do ahead of time so they're ready. And maybe from my Patreon, I might release them a bit early as a treat.
Oh, lovely.
If you're lucky. But yeah, no, this has been great, Jack. Thank you so much for having me on. Again, it is a complete honor to be the very first guest. Hopefully, it's all upwards from here. It's all in an upwards trajectory. The guests will only get better.
Well, no, the guests won't get better, but hopefully, maybe I'll find my thing a little bit more than the trajectory will be slightly up, but it'll be nothing to do with the guest at all, to do with the host.
Okay. Well, this is humble beginnings for Statham. It's humble beginnings for you, but I think you're off to a very strong start, much like this classic Stath entry.
Look at what I did there. Such a pro. Thank you, everyone else, for listening and for partaking in this journey with me through the Stath's filmography. I'm Jack's Musings, and just in case, that's JACS, and you can find me on Twitter where I am most active. You can also contact the show directly on Twitter under the name Back to the Film Og, and make sure you use the hashtag Follow Their Filmography. Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome.
This show has been presented to you by the Pop Grillers, a collection of hive minds who provide spoiler-free reviews of anything from pop culture in less time than it takes to listen to a song. I'm also a proud member of the Comics Emotion family, a super place full of the world's greatest people, dedicated to bringing you podcasts on a variety of geeky topics. So, please make sure you take the time to search, subscribe, and rate our shows whenever and wherever you listen. Until next time, be excellent to each other and make sure you take the time to treat yourself too. I am Jack signing off. Yippee-ki-yay, movie lovers. Cut.